You are listening to the Build a Brain podcast with Dr. Jeanne Zehr. Join the quest to shape an efficient brain that fires on all cylinders and runs like a fine-tuned machine. You are now in the capable hands of an international presenter and a pathologically optimistic brain builder. Dr. Zehr will give you the right blocks to build that 3 pounds of cerebral muscle for you, your child, or the young adult you teach or mentor. Block by block, thought by thought, now is the time to build a better brain. Let's get started.
Welcome, friends, to the Build a Brain podcast. This is Dr. Jeanne Zehr, and I'm just so happy that you are joining me today. We are going to talk about such an important thinking skill. It's think abstractly. So it's one more of those blocks. Remember, block by block, thought by thought, we're going to build a brain. And this one is like wildly important. So when you are reading a book, I want you to imagine especially if you like fiction. So if you're reading fiction and you get so into the book that you could cry or you laugh out loud or you lose track of time, you're probably visualizing in your head that story. You're so into this fiction book. So you are probably thinking abstractly. So that's a little taste. It's more than that, but that is part of what this thinking skill is all about. So another way to describe it is, okay, don't get shivers or anything when I bring up this word, but algebra. When you're thinking, Kiboy's laughing, when you're thinking X plus Y equals, okay, you've got to think abstractly when you're using variables and you're putting letters to represent. Think about the word represent. That's the same or close to what visualizing is doing or thinking abstractly. So when I say hippopotamus, you can have a picture in your mind of that animal because you learned from pictures or your parents took you to a zoo. You have seen a hippopotamus before. So you have a mental image in your brain for a hippopotamus. That's what this is about. It's mind pictures. Some other words I could use, it's internalizing. Reuven talked about internalization or interiorization. I know, big words. But he was just talking about having it in your head instead of having to have it concretely out in the world. So here's a real simple example. So let's say a 4-year-old has learned how to count 10 teddy bears. So he can line up his little plastic teddy bears and count them and get to 10. So when he's 8 years old, do you want him to have to carry around the teddy bears in his pocket to know what 10 is? No. You want him to have internalized a mental picture of 10 being the same as maybe the 10 digits on my hands, or this idea of 10 things, but I don't have to count real things concretely. I can hold it in my head. I've had the wonderful honor of training in 12 different countries. And when I'm in European countries that use the metric system, I ask them if they can show me with 2 fingers, how big is an inch? And they have no idea, but I'll say, show me a centimeter, and they can show me a centimeter. But I can't show you what a centimeter is. They have internalized that measurement system. Well, that's awesome to have that in your head. And the more things that you can have abstract pictures for, or a mental image for, or a representation of in your brain, the more efficient you're going to be as a thinker. Does that make sense? Okay. You want as much as possible in your head. So I'm just going to guess, Kibwe, that when you are thinking about putting together my podcast, you have this amazing brain that can visualize all the tracks. Am I saying the right word?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay, I know that word, but I don't know much about audio engineering. That's why I'm so happy that I can pay you to do this, because you are so good at this, okay? We
Absolutely.
outsource what we don't want to take time. Not that I couldn't learn. You sent me a program, I forget what the name of it was, and I downloaded it and I looked at it and I went, yeah, I could learn to do this. But no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna pay Kibwe to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as you become good in any field like you are with audio engineering and podcasting, you have mental images and abstract concepts for how to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we pay someone who's an expert, is if we don't have time to do it. All
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's different for everybody, right? Because I can't think the way a nurse thinks, or maybe the way that you think when you are encountering or hearing someone having a specific problem. Your brain starts to make those solutions. Mine doesn't do that. I would be like, you guys should listen to Build a Brain podcast. Jeannie's got that figured out. I do audio. I'm not even going to get into all that.
It's okay to decide what's going to be my avenue.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be where I work. That's okay. Just never think that it's impossible. Like someday I'd love to sit and have you just show me everything that goes into making a podcast. Not that I have to master it, but then I would have a better mental image of the work that you're doing for the Build a Brain podcast. I don't have to master it, but at least to be able to have some mental images for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense, because then you can, when you're recording your podcasts, you can think ahead to what it's going to look like in the actual editing window and how you want to make sure you sound and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just a really, really important. There are some very specific programs. So if you need more help in this area, you might contact me personally, because there are some structured programs. There are about 20 to 30% of all people are born that their brain is not able to make visual images. And it's not a good thing. It's going to hinder learning. It's going to get in the way of reading comprehension. It's going to get in the way of higher level thinking. And these can be very smart people in many ways, but they have to work so much harder because they don't have mental pictures for concepts and ideas. And there are some formal programs to actually develop that. So I just recommend you contact us at the MindCAP Center if you want to know more about this. So here's some things to do to build your ability to think abstractly or visualize, okay? Is keep reading out loud to your children. One of the biggest mistakes parents make is, oh, she learned to read in first grade. She's a great reader, so I quit reading to her. No. Even your fourth and fifth grader, you could be reading middle school level books, a much higher level genre of book. And so you're going to read vocabulary to them that you probably wouldn't use at the dinner table. So you always want to read fiction or nonfiction out loud to your children that's a higher level than what they can read to themselves. That makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
And then you're going to build their vocabulary and their ability to visualize, because you're going to keep growing their vocabulary. Okay. Another thing, encourage lots of artistic drawing and doodling. So if a kid has to have, maybe he's studying, I don't know, Kibwe, help me think of some big concept that might be a high school or a college concept. What could be a word in science or
Biology or
yeah, yeah, something like the word biology. Okay, so say your kid is going to take biology and they're dreading it. So you might help them create a symbol for biology. So it might be green because biology is usually about living things like cells that grow. Maybe it's like an amoeba with a cell nucleus. I don't know. Just some little symbol that is going to represent biology, but it's important that your kid make it up, not you. And for every big concept that the biology teacher represents, like mitosis, there we go. There's a word that I think I'm pulling out of my biology background. I think that has to do with cells separating or something or growing. I don't know. Make a drawing for it. Every time you draw a symbol for a big idea or concept, your brain is visualizing it and grappling with it and struggling with it and trying to figure out, what can I draw? What could represent this idea? Just the act of the struggle is helping your brain to learn about that concept. So draw, make symbols, make pictures, and it's fun. Have colored pencils. Like, you should go to class with blank paper and colored pencils. And there's a whole process. It's called mind mapping. It's a whole mind-blowing way to take notes where you don't just sit and try to write down everything the professor says. So this is particularly high school level and college level note taking, where you're drawing webs and pictures and symbols. I started using it years ago, and I can come home from a conference where I'm maybe 3 days worth of taking notes, and I have all these webs and pictures and symbols. I remember more of the conference than if I'd sat and tried to write just words.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to try that.
Okay, try it.
I'm
It's
definitely
really
going
fun
to try
too.
that.
Yeah. And somebody's going to look at your web and your notes and go, whoa, what's that? It doesn't matter, because you're going to know.
So this makes me think of something. So my
Okay.
mom used to always have us use graph paper. That was her thing. She
Ooh.
always had us use graph paper. And as I got older, I've kind of gotten away from some of that, but I bought a lot of big boards to stick on my wall so I could map out like the podcast network or goals that I want to achieve and things like that.
Yeah.
And I've been using more graph paper. Do you think creating those mind maps on graph paper would be like next level? I'm definitely gonna try that, because
Absolutely.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. And add color code some of your concepts and ideas. Okay. Everything that has to do with the audio stream is a certain color. Of course, you have probably 50 different things that go with audio, but you could start color coding, concepts.
That's
Then it
awesome.
pops out when you look at your graphs. So yeah, graph paper sounds like a great idea. Have you seen the journals that are dots?
I have seen that.
Yeah, same idea. Is you connect dots to do your note taking, and you're drawing symbols and pictures in your journal.
That's next level right there. That's
Woohoo!
amazing.
Yeah. And your brain's going to remember it. So do a lot of drawing. Okay. All right. Couple questions. What are you seeing in your mind right now? And I know what was happening in your head, Kibwe, because you brought up the graph paper. So that's a question you can ask when you're talking about a topic that you know is kind of heavy for the person you're mentoring or your child. Say, tell me what you see in your head right now. And see if you can get them to articulate what kind of pictures are in their head. And they may say something crazy like, I see a tree, or I'm thinking about flowers. Oh, tell me why. Follow it, whatever kind of picture they're seeing in their head, and try to see if it can make sense so that that's a way for you to kind of get in their head, and you're finding out how they're thinking and how they're learning. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me what you see right now in your head. And you did that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
really
saw graph
great.
paper. All right. So there we go. That was episode 16, Thinking Abstractly. It also means visualizing and internalizing, having big ideas and concepts in our head so that we can be a more efficient thinker. Thank you, friends, for following the Build a Brain podcast. It's so fun to know that I'm touching lives all over this beautiful globe called Earth. Remember to go in and leave a 5-star review. That will just help the podcast, and maybe write up a little review of how it's helped you. Maybe this particular podcast, something that really touched you. So see you at our next podcast, block by block, thought by thought. Let's build your brain.
Thanks for listening to the Build a Brain podcast. If you're wanting more information on how to build a brain, please visit the website for the MindCAP Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana at www.mindcap.org. That's www.mindcap.org. Children and adults from across the United States and Canada have found the cognitive help they needed at the MindCAP Center. Their specialized team is trained in all levels of the Feuerstein program and can literally help you or your child build a new brain. We'll see you next time.